Hello, and welcome to the first part of this short series, Introduction to the Ethics of Immanuel Kant. Today, we will look at the foundations of Kant's ethics. We will classify Kant's ethics, clarify important terms, and finally take a look at his view of human nature. Immanuel Kant is probably the most famous German philosopher. He lived between 1724 and 1804 in the Age of Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is characterized by a focus on reason. Prejudices and traditional opinions are critically questioned, and the natural sciences gain strength. There is talk of a Copernican turn in philosophy. It is no longer the things in the world or experience, but the mind that is now the measure of knowledge. Kant also wrote a very famous and still highly topical essay on the Enlightenment, an answer to the question, what is enlightenment? Kant formulated his ethics primarily in two works, in the groundwork of the metaphysics of morals and in the critique of practical reason. In order to get an initial overview of Kant's ethics, it is useful to first categorize his ethics. Kant does not advocate descriptive ethics, but normative or prescriptive ethics. In other words, he wants to prescribe how people should act, and not just describe why people act the way they do. Kant's ethics is an ethics of reason, and not an ethics of emotion, as we know it from Hume or Schopenhauer, for example. Actions are evaluated with the help of reason. Feelings must not play a role in the evaluation of actions. Kant advocates deontological ethics. In contrast to teleological ethics, which asks about the goals of actions, Kant judges actions according to whether they comply with an obligatory rule or whether actions are carried out or refrained from due to a certain obligation. And finally, Kant's ethics is an ethics of conviction, which asks about the intention to act, the conviction, the motive. Unlike the ethics of responsibility, for example, Kant is not concerned with possible consequences. Three concepts are particularly important for understanding the foundations of Kant's ethics. Firstly, the word critique, which we already know from the title Critique of Practical Reason. For Kant, the term critique means an investigation, an examination, a critical questioning of previously held certainties. The second important concept is autonomy. Kant understands this to mean the ability of human beings to set laws for themselves and to act accordingly. And the third important concept is the concept of reason, that is, the human ability to gain knowledge and make judgments. Kant distinguishes between pure or theoretical reason and practical reason. Pure reason refers to a priori judgments without reference to sensory experience. Practical reason refers to human action, to moral judgments. Finally, let's take a look at Kant's view of human nature. According to Kant, man is a citizen of two worlds, namely the world of reason and the world of sense. He is a dual being who belongs to two different worlds. As part of the rational world, man is a rational being. As part of the sensory world, he is a sensory being. Accordingly, he has very different characteristics and abilities. He is a spiritual creature that can act independently of his senses and instincts, that is autonomously and freely. Only in this way is moral action possible at all. With the help of his reason, man can override his feelings and instincts. Kant speaks of inclinations. Because human beings are autonomous and can legislate for themselves, they possess a dignity, an absolute intrinsic value. Man is not just a means to an end, but an end in himself. The ability to legislate for oneself therefore determines the purposefulness of man in himself, and thus his dignity. At the same time, however, as part of nature, man is an animal among animals. He is dependent on his senses and instincts, and is therefore determined and unfree. This means that inclinations also have an effect on humans, and if they were only sensory beings, they would have no choice but to obey these inclinations. However, unlike animals, humans are capable of acting morally against their inclinations thanks to their reason. As part of the world of reason, man is significant. Through his reason, he can recognize the relationships and connections and the infinity of the universe, and thus has a share in this infinity. As part of the world of sense, however, he is tiny and insignificant. Through his reason, as a spiritual creature, he is more than mere matter, and therefore immortal. As a sensory being, however, he is mortal, mere matter that decays after death. Kant's view of human nature is particularly important in order to understand how people can act morally, what influences their will, and what role the categorical imperative plays in this. The next parts of this short introduction to Kant's ethics will deal with these questions.